Hi everybody, welcome to the final lecture for a while from Principal's Guide to School Budgeting. The way that I've broken this book up in the course, we're going to look up through chapter 3 because it's highly conceptual, and then we're going to look at the activities planning and the budgeting later on in the course. So this is the last of the foundational lectures from this chapter, and then after that we're going to be moving on and looking more at the budgeting and the more practical application, but we won't do that for a while. So this chapter, is going to look at the concepts of culture and data. My hope is that you've done this in other classes. This is going to be a quick review for all of you. What makes up the elements of culture in a building? It's values, beliefs, and attitudes. One of the big ideas and missions of the EDLE statements is that you promote a shared vision of culture to all stakeholders. We're going to talk about culture, how it impacts buildings, and also how it can impact the budgeting process as well. So the point of values in schools. Values are what leaders basically believe in and what they feel should be a shared vision between their teachers and their staff. The point of having values is that the leader should be able to have the budget fit the mission of the school. If you can draw transparency and say, this is the mission of the school and this is the budget, that's going to help you under values. Beliefs are what the leaders say should be true. You should be reflective on what you believe in and how it affects the school budget. If you're in an early childhood building and you're the building principal and you're saying that the Daily 5 or Marie Clay's Reading Recovery are your missions for the school, and that's a belief that you have as an administrator, then that has to be something that's reflective in the budget. You have to show that that's something that you're going to pay for. If you say that after-school tutoring is a big belief that you have, that this helps improve school climate and school culture and performance, then that has to be addressed in the budget and supported through funding. That's one of the big ideas and important. So attitudes have to be, it has to be something that's part of the planning process. Whatever the attitude of the school is, if you're implementing maybe a school-wide bullying plan, and that's important, that attitude has to be reflected in the budget as well. And attitudes are shaped through experience. You learn what the appropriate attitude is for your building and your organization based on the experience that you have. So the other end of this spectrum is data. Big idea is this second bullet, and I want you to pay attention to it. Data needs to be reflective of where money goes and how it impacts student learning. As building principals that are responsible for administering numbers of tests during the year, if you're investing the majority of your money in improving a STEM program, then data needs to be reflective that the money that you invested improved that program. If you can prove that to your school superintendent, then you're doing something to show that you budgeted appropriately and what you believed in it was supported by data. So this is important and this is a big idea. You're not going to have the autonomy that a superintendent has, but you're going to have the autonomy over your building, and if it's something you believe in and you have data that can support it, you're going to look good, and that's important. So we're going to talk about barriers to the use of data. This is another big idea from this chapter, and we're going to talk about each one of these a little bit. So think about it from this perspective. You're in a program right now where you're really not getting much in terms of data-driven assessment. You're not. A lot of principal-level programs don't do this. It's more or less you do it as part of your internship, or you learn as you go. Also, as we've established earlier in this course, districts have localized control. So districts do data their own way, and you can only learn their way by being employed by the district. So you don't get as much in terms of training for data that you could have or you should have. Time. Principals don't have time in their day. No responsibilities are taken off their plates, they're busy, so the time to plan around data becomes difficult. When do you plan for data? You do it at the end of the school day when every single teacher and every single student has left the building, or you do it in the evenings when you're home hanging out with your family. Now you're doing data assessment. The turnaround for test scores, is significant. There's time where you're waiting and you don't have time to assess the scores because you gave the test in March and you don't get the results back until July or August. So you lost out on 4 months without knowing your performance, and then boom, you're ready to start the next school year. So that can be a problem. You got to be proactive and on top of the data as soon as it comes back and ready and planning to use it and assess it appropriately. So sometimes there's too much data. We're going to talk about different types of personnel that all of you are in this class. Some of you are working in career tech schools, some of you are working in high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. High schools have a lot of data. If you're in a bigger high school, there's a lot of data. And sometimes if you're in a smaller district, there's not enough. So the solution is experience, and that comes with time. You'll learn as you become a building principal what's important that you spend your time assessing, and what's not important that you spend your time assessing. The more stakeholders that it impacts, the more important that it is in the grand scheme of things. So, some people are afraid. Data comes back, and instead of trying to figure out what went wrong, they're saying this is what went right and what I should be rewarded for. So people fear evaluation and they fear data. And that can impact the budget as well. If you're trying to hide something and prevent it from being known, that can certainly cause issues with the budget. So fear of exposure. This is more for teachers. If data comes back incorrect or it comes back that a teacher did poorly and you stratify it so you know how individual teachers did, that can be a problem. Teachers, look bad in front of their colleagues, and I've said this a number of times. Teachers are very high on themselves. Most teachers think they're great teachers, and because of that, they won't look at the data and they'll say, well, the data has to be wrong. I'm a great teacher. So that can be a problem as well. They don't want to be exposed. And some individuals just haven't had the training in its data more than cultural. Different programs have different emphases on data and data analysis. Some undergraduate programs have a big component of this. The one that I directed, we had 9 credits of data-driven assessment for early childhood educators. We looked at one that was specifically for early learning centers, one that was at the pre-KK level, and one that was grades 1 through 4. Our graduates came out of it and they understood data and what data was. Some programs don't do it. And you're going to have teachers in your building that have never given a standardized test before, don't know what they are, haven't experienced them. What if they student taught in the fall? They didn't get to see a testing cycle. So it's a problem that it's technical and they don't understand how to do it because they weren't exposed to it. And that can be challenging as well. So the answer is exposure. If you can explain to the faculty and staff data and responsibility over it, you're going to do well. So data, it's more appropriate for a research methods class, which some of you have had, some of you haven't. But I'm going to use this on a quiz. I expect you to know the different types of data so that you can assess it, and then you'll have a better understanding of them. So disaggregated data. This is data that is given back to you on a 1-year period, and it's done at a specific period of time. It'll say grade level, race, previous achievements, gender, socioeconomic status, number of students that are special ed, number of students that are ELL, number of students that are free and reduced lunch. You're breaking it down into these specific elements and snapshots of how those particular groups performed. Longitudinal data, it's used to track growth. I want to note that if you do this correctly, and a lot of districts don't do this correctly, longitudinal data gets rid of students that weren't a part of the data from start to finish. If you're looking at the success of a student on standardized tests from 3rd to 5th grade, and the student only came in the district in 4th grade, they should be eliminated from the data. You should only look at kids that have been in that building from 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade because it's longitudinal. In transient districts, this doesn't work. Thinking about it in terms of school attendance. You have people that are tracking attendance, but it's not longitudinal if there are new kids every single year. So longitudinal data has to be included from people that were there from the beginning to the end of it. So perceptional data is normally done through surveys. You're looking at the cat in the mirror who thinks that he's a lion. This is what people think. What needs improvement, and this is normally done in survey form. If you send out a parent survey, you get results back. You send out a teacher survey, you get results back. this is normally done in that form. So qualitative data is one-on-one data. You do this through focus groups, observations, budget decisions. It really doesn't influence it unless you have a need or a surplus. This is when you have a teacher coming to you and saying, our department needs this amount of money, or our department, is lacking in this, and with this extra funding, we could do this. So this can help, and it can inform categories. Quantitative data is hard numbers. This is basically test scores, enrollment figures, attendance rates, special ed numbers, free and reduced lunch. Hard numbers, can't lie, numbers don't lie. So one of the biggest challenges that you'll get with budgeting is whether or not you get an assistant principal in your building. Most states at the elementary level set that there is a certain population of students that there has to be to permit an assistant principal. Sometimes attendance numbers go up and they go down, and you get the assistant principal, you lose the assistant principal, and that can create a problem as well. So my advice to you is, if you are working in a population like that and you're on the border, don't depend on the assistant principal being there. If you know that there's always going to be one, you got nothing to worry about. But if you're within 25 to 50 students every year, you got to stress this. So last thing that you do is celebrate success. I think this is important. The books has a few different ways of looking at it, and we'll talk about this. So what can you do to thank your staff? Handwritten notes are better than emails. If you want to tell somebody that they did a great job, write them a note in person, make it personal, it'll make them feel good. End of the year parties for staff are great. Give students pre and post standardized testing parties. Congratulate them on a good job well done taking the test. And if you give different personalized gifts or awards to teachers based on their personality, put this in your budget. You can spend money on this stuff, and it's going to improve the quality of your teaching staff, because they're going to trust you and they're going to be happy with you. So always include all staff members. Anybody that is a staff member, you should include. Success should be shared and celebrated with everybody in a building. That's important. So that's it. We're not looking at this book for a while. We're going to look more at money in schools and the Oklahoma State budgeting system. We're going to revisit this in a few weeks when we do how to budget. But right now, we're more worried about practical application. So you're done with this book for a while, but use it when you need it. Thank you.